There is something about the 1960s in Australia that people who lived through it cannot forget. This was a time when the world was simpler, rules were different, and things we take for granted today simply did not exist yet. If you grew up in the 1960s, you remember a childhood that would make modern parents absolutely lose their minds. From how we got around to what we ate, from school discipline to summer safety, the Australia of the 1960s was a different world entirely. Let's walk through what life actually looked like back then, and why most of it would get you arrested or sued, or at least have someone filming you for TikTok today. Smoking everywhere. The 1960s were peak tobacco culture in Australia. Doctors smoked, teachers smoked, your old man smoked in the car with all the windows up while you sat in the back, breathing it all in like a tiny human chimney. Nobody blinked. We all just accepted our fate as second-hand smoke receptacles. Smoking sections in restaurants? That was not a thing, because the entire restaurant was a smoking section. The non-smoking section was outside in the car park. Fair dinkum, people smoked on planes and nobody complained. Flight attendants would walk down the aisle with a lighter, offering to help passengers light up. The in-flight meal was a cigarette. Try that now, and you would be tackled by an air marshal before you could say designated smoking area. The real kicker was advertising. Cigarette advertising was everywhere. Your favourite cricketer endorsed one brand. Your favourite footballer endorsed another. Doctors even appeared in ads with the line, "More doctors smoke Camels." Kids collected the cards that came in cigarette packets like they were Pokemon. We were basically being groomed by big tobacco, and nobody thought it was dodgy. Absolute madness when you think about it now. But back then, she'll be right, mate. What's a little lung cancer between friends? No seatbelts, no worries. Cars in the 1960s had seatbelts, technically, but wearing them was for wimps, mate. Most Aussies did not bother. The seatbelt was just this mysterious strap thing your parents used to hang their shopping bags on. Kids would pile into the back seat, or the boot of the station wagon if there was not enough room inside. The family dog got a seat before you did. Nobody thought twice about it. If your family went on a road trip, you would stop at the servo for petrol and a drink, then chuck the kids in the back with a mattress and let them roll around like loose change while you drove. She'll be right. Some families would pack 7 or 8 kids back there. It was like human Tetris. Even better, young kids would sit in the front seat, sometimes on their old man's lap, helping to steer. You would be 5 years old, death gripping the steering wheel, thinking you were driving. You were not, but nobody told you that. The idea of a child safety seat existed overseas, but most Australian families had never seen one. Ripper parenting by today's standards, yeah. Car accidents happened, obviously. But the thinking was that you just had to be careful. And if you flew through the windscreen, well, that was what you got for not holding on tight enough. The concept of mandatory seatbelt laws would not arrive until 1970 in Victoria. And even then, plenty of blokes grumbled about the government telling them what to do. They would yell that this is a free country, right before bouncing off the dashboard. Smacking was standard. Physical punishment was just how discipline worked in the 1960s. At home, kids who misbehaved got a smack. Sometimes with a hand, sometimes with a wooden spoon, sometimes with whatever was within arm's reach. A newspaper, a thong, the TV remote. Your mum had the accuracy of a sniper with a wooden spoon. You could be 3 rooms away and she would still get you. Parents did not worry about whether this was damaging. It was how their parents raised them, and their parents before that. Most families believed kids needed firm boundaries, and a quick smack delivered those boundaries. No wookers. But it was not just at home. Schools had corporal punishment too, The cane, the strap. If you acted up in class or talked back to a teacher, you would get sent to the principal's office for a few whacks across the hand. It hurt. That was the point. Proper painful. You would come back to class with your hand looking like you had been slapping bricks. And when you got home and told your parents what happened, you would probably cop another smack for getting in trouble at school in the first place. Double jeopardy was absolutely allowed. There was no ringing the school to complain. If you suggested your teacher was being dodgy, your parents would just tell you to stop being a sook. What did you do to deserve it? They would ask. The teacher was always right, even if the teacher was clearly wrong, even if the teacher had a few kangaroos loose in the top paddock. Still right. Kids roamed free. If you were a kid in the 1960s, your parents expected you to disappear for hours at a time. After brekkie, you would head outside and not come back until the streetlights came on. Nobody knew exactly where you were. Nobody had mobile phones to check in. You might be at the creek. You might be at a mate's place. You might be 3 suburbs over, getting into strife you would only confess to 40 years later. As long as you were home by dark, it was all good. She'll be right, mate. Parents weren't neglectful. This was just normal. The neighborhood was your playground, and all the local kids roamed together like a tiny, unsupervised gang. If you fell and scraped your knee, you would go to the nearest house, and whoever's mum answered the door would patch you up. Community parenting. Everyone looked out for everyone else's kids, but nobody hovered. Nobody tracked you with a GPS. Nobody needed to know if you had eaten lunch. You would just show up at someone's house at lunchtime and their mum would make you a sanger. Beautiful system. You would come home absolutely stuffed, covered in dirt, possibly bleeding, and your mum would just hose you down in the backyard like a muddy dog. Where were you? Around. What did you do? Stuff. And that was the entire conversation. Try letting your 7-year-old wander the neighborhood alone today and see how long it takes before someone reports you. You would have the cops, child services, and the local Facebook group at your door within the hour. Drinking and driving. The 1960s had drink driving laws technically, but enforcement was about as strict as a suggestion. Breathalyzers were not widely used in Australia until the late 1960s, and even then, most blokes figured they were fine to drive after a few beers at the pub. The attitude was that you just had to be sensible. Do not get blind drunk, obviously, but a couple of schooners and then a drive home? She'll be right. You'd had 4? Well, you felt fine, so the car would probably drive itself if needed. Pubs closed at 6 o'clock in most states, the famous 6 o'clock swill, which meant blokes would rush from work to drink as much as they could before closing time, then drive home. The roads at 6:15 in the evening were basically a movable pub. Flat out dangerous, looking back on it now. You would see blokes weaving down the street like they were dodging invisible obstacles. People would say, "He is fine, he just had a big lunch." Random breath testing would not become standard until the 1980s. So, unless you were driving so badly that you hit something, nobody checked. The bottle-o run after work often meant driving with a few already in you. The idea that any amount of alcohol could impair your driving existed, but most people thought they were the exception. They would claim they drive better after a few beers. They did not, but they believed it. Absolute confidence, zero coordination. The 1960s were not perfect, far from it. We were basically running a nationwide experiment in what does not kill you, makes you stronger. And a lot of it nearly killed us. But they were a different time, shaped by different priorities and different knowledge. What comes to mind when you think of growing up in the 60s? I would love to hear your memories in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip back in time, do not forget to subscribe for more nostalgic content coming your way. Good on ya for making it this far. You are a ripper.